morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, it's time we had a little bit of a look at the best budget decks from Sword and Shield. You see, a couple of days ago, we talked about the best new decks from Sword and Shield. The best decks that didn't exist before the set, but do exist after. You see, lots of them had kind of expensive cards in. So what we're going to do is talk about deck building on a budget and look at the best budget decks to come out from Sword and Shield. Now, when we're talking budgets, we mean few, preferably none, but very few GXs, Pokemon V, etc. And generally using lesser played Pokemon, because of course the more a Pokemon is played, the more value will be attached. Something like Jirachi is just a regular holo rare, but it sees so much play, the price ends up going somewhat higher than we might like. So starting off with a deck that I have no idea what to do with, Centiskorch. Centiskorch looks like it should be amazing. I just don't know how to play Centiskorch. You see, what we're really worried about here is the first attack, the main attack as I call it, that essentially lets you mill as many cards to the top of your opponent's deck as there are fire energy attached to Centiskorch. So one way to play this very simply is just use Welder. Use Welder in your attachment for the turn, don't go overboard, and just be trying to mill 3-4 cards a turn. Because you see, you attach energy and Welder, there's 3 cards milled, and then if Centiskorch doesn't get KO'd, you attach again, Welder again, and there's 6 cards milled, for instance. And of course, the more you mill, the less likely it is your opponent is going to draw out of it, and then you're going to end up winning. But we don't exactly know if this is the best way to play it. There are opportunities to go even sillier. You see, what you could do is use a combination with Electro GX, which I know is a GX, but it's also one that sees very little play and the price has not risen very much at all. Electro GX has the ability Extra Energy Bomb. During your turn, you may attach 5 energy cards from your discard pile to your Pokemon other than EX or GX, in any way you like, and then knock out Electrode. Shouldn't work for Pokemon V, definitely does work for Pokemon V. So what you do here is blow up a couple of these, put your opponent down to a small hand with Reset Stamp, and then start milling a ridiculous amount of cards. Or there's another potential way to play it, where you use Porygon Z to attach lots of energy, and then Typhlosion to turn that energy into fire energy. I'm not sure what the best way to play Centiskorch is. I do know it's going to be a budget deck, and I really am excited to start having a play. One that is seeing a little bit of play and a little bit of success is OBSTAGOON with Sableye. Now, one of the things we need to mention here, Sableye is a Pokemon V. It's not seeing a huge amount of play and success other than the odd one of these decks popping around, so I'm not expecting it to be a terribly expensive card, but you have been warned it is a Pokemon V. Now, OBSTAGOON was actually in the pre-release kit, so that's not going to be terribly expensive, and OBSTAGOON, well, OBSTAGOON kind of keeps going. So what we've got is the Galarian Zigzagoon. When you play that onto your bench, you may put 1 damage counter on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And then Galarian OBSTAGOON, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Sableye then for 2 Darkness Energy does 60 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active, added on top of 10 base damage. Sounds like fun. Then you've of course got Yveltal GX. Now again, I know Yveltal is a GX, but seriously, go look up the price of this card. It's not priced like a GX. You can pick it up for a couple of bucks. Because what Yveltal does, if your opponent's active Pokemon has exactly 4 damage counters on, that's 1 Zigzagoon, 1 OBSTAGOON, then you get an instant automatic no questions asked KO. This could be good. And of course, OBSTAGOON's got a nice attack that for 2 energy does 90 damage and makes it immune to attacks from basic Pokemon. That's not exactly an attack which is going to never help. That's a really good attack as well. This is probably the least budget one on the list, purely because you kind of need to play Evil Tal and Sableye, but don't expect those cards to be terribly expensive. I am comfortable calling this a budget deck. And honestly, of the decks on the list, this is seeing the most play and success of all of them. How about that Cinderace, eh? Stage 2's work now. Stage 2 is like legitimate decks, which are actually good and actually seeing play and we can actually take seriously. Although, unfortunately, this is not the Cinderace featured in the theme deck, which is a little bit sad. And Cinderace, you can play a bunch of stuff with it. You can play Victini Prism Star. It's a good card, maybe you want to. You can play pretty much whatever you like, but it does exist pretty much as a deck entirely on its own. You see, Cinderace has got the ability Libero. Once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from your bench to your active, you may attach up to 2 fire energy from your discard pile to it. Then you attach for the turn. Then you do 190 damage. And you discard 2 energy, but it doesn't matter that you have to discard 2 energy, because of course you're then going to move a new one to the active and attach 2 energy to it, so nobody really cares. It's that gosh darn good. I mean, really, the only other Pokemon you need to play it with are maybe Jirachi and that Ninetales, the one that's really good gusting, because you get to discard 2 cards from your hand and then switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon into their active. That seems pretty good to me. And it is a fire deck, so you could use Welder, but honestly, I think this might be the really weird, unusual example of a fire deck that has no real interest in playing Welder, because you're accelerating energy nicely onto you with the ability. You've still got Fiery Flint to get energy from the deck, and Giant Half to get energy from the deck, and Fire Crystal to get energy from the discard pile, and then you've always got Heat Factory Prism Star for a little bit of extra draw. But honestly, this is a Pokemon that pretty much exists by itself and is a pretty good deck without much help. And all you're really playing is a few rare cards. I think you'll be alright. Now, we've also seen a little bit of play and a little bit of love for Polteageist. Now, as we go down the list here, these decks are getting a little bit weirder, but I adore Polteageist. You see, Polteageist has a lovely attack, 1 psychic, 1 colourless energy, Poltergeist. Your opponent reveals their hand, and you do 50 damage for each trainer card in your opponent's hand. It's the exact same attack we see on Gengar and Mimikyu, the tag team. And this builds up extremely quickly. This is a very, very powerful attack, albeit on a very, very weak Pokemon. Like, literally to the point you've only got 60 HP on your main attacker. Though, that does mean you can use Professor Round's lecture here to actually search out your evolved Pokemon as well as your pre-evolutions. Now, the other things we tend to see here are Shedinja. That's the one that you can attach as a Pokemon tool, and then you don't give up a prize. So you're weak, but if you're not giving up a prize, who cares? And Omastar, because Omastar can item lock your opponent. If you've got fewer Pokemon in play than your opponent, they're not allowed to play item cards, which will build up trainer cards in their hand, which will mean your Poltergeist does a lot more damage. And you can really take advantage of the fact you're getting a lot of Pokemon KO'd by playing stuff like Rosa. Every time a Pokemon gets KO'd, you play a Rosa, and you search your deck for a Pokemon, a basic energy, and a trainer card. You can also play Oricorio that lets you draw 3 cards if you had a Pokemon KO'd the previous turn, but do please bear in mind that that is a GX and it won't be the cheapest card. You can play the deck without it, but it is a little bit better with it. And this is one of the few decks you're actually going to use Surprise Box. Take a card from your opponent's discard pile and put it in their hand. So you take some random trainer card that's not going to help them, put it in their hand to do an extra 50 damage. This is a legitimately good deck, albeit a risky and, let's say, a deck that falls apart quite easily because it's physically very small. But I love this deck, and it's certainly one that I'm going to be having a little bit of a play around with. But how about that Noctowl, eh? Noctowl is one of those Pokemon that when I took my first look through, when I was looking through the set, I barely gave it the time of day. But it's actually got a wonderful attack for 3 colourless energy, but remember, triple acceleration energy means that you will be able to pay this in one go. And you can use Welder because it's colourless energy, so Welder and attachment for the turn will also work. Choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Your opponent shuffles that Pokemon and all cards attached to it into their deck. And you shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. So the really cool thing here is you can play Triple Acceleration Energy, and it really doesn't matter because it doesn't fall off at the end of your turn because you're shuffling it back in before it has chance to fall off. Now, the other card which is really important, well, there are a couple of really important cards here, but one of the ones we really like is Phione. Phione, you put it from your bench on the bottom of your deck, and it makes your opponent switch their active. And it doesn't matter what they put active. The whole point of NOCTOWL is you are taking away your opponent's bench. So if the Pokemon that you want to get rid of is in the active, you use Phione. If it's on the bench, you don't. And you get rid of all their Pokemon with energy, etc, etc. You make it so they've got nothing left, and then you bring in a big Pokemon with which to smash. And we've seen a couple of different lists. One list basically just plays Triple Acceleration Energy, and then uses Snorlax V Max to come in and clean up, because it does 210 if you've got a full bench, although that list kind of hilariously does also play Basic Fighting Energy, so that you can then use Martial Arts Dojo to do even more damage. And then, of course, you'll play Buff Padding so that your Snorlax is on the field approximately forever. Gives it even more HP just in case that wasn't enough. The other list we've seen does play Welder because it's a fire deck, and it also plays Blacephalon. Now, it does play Macago, so you're a little bit more consistent. You can draw into the things that you need to draw into. It also plays a new Oranguru, which lets you swap a card in your hand for a card on the top of your deck. So you essentially use Macago to put something on top, and then Oranguru to grab it. That's kind of fun. And then it also plays just one Blacephalon GX. That is your big, I'm going to end the game by smashing and taking a big KO Pokemon. It's very cool. It's a weird deck. It's not one that I really gave the time of day to, but since we've got two very different, very cool winning decks, I might need to rethink this. And the final budget deck I want to shout out is Seaking. Again, this is another Pokemon that I was not taking seriously. But if you want to play a deck where you're not spending out on lots of Pokemon V and you're playing a very cheap Pokemon line, in comes Seaking. Seaking's got an attack for a single energy that lets you flip 3 coins, and for each heads you flip, you discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. And you just sit there getting rid of all of your opponent's energy. And that's basically it. You use Lily's Pokédoll, so that if your opponent is going to attack, they just KO that and they don't get to take a prize. You use Oranguru to get all of your resources back, so anything you want to use over and over again you can. You use Girafarig to lost zone cards from your opponent's discard pile, so anything they want to use again, they can't. You use Crushing Hammer to get rid of some more of their energy, and you use Articuno's GX attack, so that if your opponent does build up a bunch of energy, you can just get rid of it using Articuno. Discards all energy off one Pokemon. And yes, I know that is one GX, but if you compare it to something like Pikachu and Zekrom, where you're playing multiple Pikachu and Zekrom, and you're going to need a few Tapu Koko V nowadays, and you're probably going to be playing 3 or 4 Dedenne, just playing a single copy of Articuno really is not in the same league price-wise. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Some weirder decks, some slightly different decks, some decks that are not going to break the budget, not going to break the bank, but could be very, very good indeed. And I have linked winning deck lists for all of them in the description. So if there's any decks I've talked about in this video that you're thinking, hang on a second, that sounds like fun, can I have a complete deck list and maybe even, you know, have you go through the deck card by card, explaining what's in there, why it's in there, how the deck works? That's not a cheeky request. I've already done that for all of these decks, so I will link all of these in the description so that you can go and have a good old gander down there. So there we go. That's what I'm thinking about this, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my favourite budget decks. They're the ones that I think are very, very cool. But I'd like to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/TheWassy. patreon.com/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but are very cool nonetheless. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.